Hey, welcome back to Career Insights 501. I'm your host, Dr. Loso, and today we have a special guest, Callie Myers, and she is the founder of Common Marvel, and she is going to talk to us today about being a user experience strategist, researcher, and designer. So she has a lot of experience with UX, and she's going to fill us in and tell us how she can help you and or your business with user experience, engagement and research and strategy and all that great stuff. So Callie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really
Yeah.
glad to be here.
So let's get started off by telling the people a little bit about yourself. Who is Callie Myers?
Yes, thank you. So as you mentioned, professionally, I am an independent consultant and I work in user experience or UX research and strategy. I I worked as a UX designer for a very long time and evolved into more of the upfront planning, research, and strategy work as just to simply seeing that it was a need. I would be hired as a UX designer and I would start asking a bunch of questions about what it was I was actually going to design and find out that my clients didn't have any of that sorted out yet. So I would have to do that work in order to facilitate the design work. And it's what I do better. Anyway, so that's me professionally. I've been an independent consultant for a little over 7 years now. I'm currently in the middle of my 7 year itch, trying to figure out what's next. I work and live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And it's currently 12 degrees and the snow is covering the ground. Personally, I spend a lot of time salsa dancing and traveling, and I have a home that has a lot of garden space. So I'm in the summertime when it's not 12 degrees out, I'm growing flowers and plants, and I have a dog that I run around town with, and yeah, that's me on a personal. So
Gotcha. So what got you into salsa? That's interesting.
I actually a friend that I grew up with, her dad was from Ecuador,
Mm-hmm.
and he is a musician, and her family was always having parties, and her older brothers taught me how to dance, just kind of in their garage, hanging out when I was like 15, 16, and uh, you know, started doing it just as for fun then, and took a long hiatus, but got back into it about a year ago, taking classes. And the salsa scene in Minneapolis has kind of ebbed and flowed over the course of my lifetime, and it's flowing right now. There's tons of great bands in town, and
Mm-hmm.
lots of different parties happening, and dance studios that teach the dances are hosting dances and things like that, which sort of feel like high school dances, because these studios um, can't sell. They don't have like a bar or anything like that, so there's like a punch bowl in the corner and some cookies,
Mm,
and everyone is just there to dance. It's really fun.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanna get back to that, but I want to ask you a
Okay.
question about your garden. Do
Yeah.
you have a winter garden? Because I didn't really think I'm from Mississippi and
Uh-huh.
we have gardens in the summer and we try
Yeah.
to have to get everything garden before the winter. Oh, well, hold on. Do you just grow flowers or do you grow like vegetables and stuff as well?
Yeah, I grow some vegetables too. Uh-huh.
Okay. I know like lettuce and that sort of stuff does well in the winter. Do you do anything like that in the winter or no? Just
I
like I'm
do
not taking
not.
care of. Okay.
No, it's I could see those things doing well maybe in the winter, and there's gardening zones. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what garden zone Mississippi is in, or where you grew up, but Minnesota is in garden zone 5, and it gets like brutally cold here. So nothing's
Mm,
going to grow outside. So if I
gotcha.
wanted to do a winter garden, it would have to be
Like
um,
inside.
inside with some grow
Gotcha.
lights and
Mhm.
um, but I don't have the space for that in my
Mhm.
little tiny house. So, but in the summer, I liked. I mean, tomatoes are super easy to grow. Lettuce is easy. I've tried to grow sugar snap peas on three separate occasions, and they just don't want to do it for me. So
Mm.
maybe I'll try a fourth time this year, but it's heartbreaking. I love sugar snap peas; they're my favorite, and I can't get them to grow. So
Well, maybe fourth time is the charm
yeah,
for those. Yeah.
right on. Yeah.
Um, Before we get into like the actual like what this is about, I did want
Uh,
to ask you about Minnesota because I think it's one of those places, Midwest, right? Is that the
yep.
part of the
Yep.
country? So
Yeah.
I think it's one of those places like the South that people have this misconception of. So is there
Uh-huh.
anything that you would like to say about Minnesota to clear up any type of stereotypes? Because I find myself always very defensive about Mississippi. Because yeah, like people think we're a bunch of hillbillies. Mississippi is slow and backwards in some regards, or maybe a lot of regards with some stuff that's going on down there now. But I don't think it's the you know slave history chapter that people think that it is. Um,
Yeah, that's super fair. I guess so. Being that I live here, I don't, it's hard for me to know exactly what stereotypes people bring to the table, but the movie Fargo is what a lot of people tell me they know they
mm,
remember this movie Fargo, and just there are certain aspects of Minnesota that are very quaint and Midwestern and um, uh, sort of like the movie portrays, but here in the Twin Cities. Um, there is a ton of art and theater and music and culture. We've got First Avenue, which is the music venue that Prince owned,
mm,
and we get a ton of amazing musical artists coming to First Avenue and going through town. We've got a really vibrant comedy scene here
mm,
in town. And like I mentioned earlier, the salsa dancing scene is just sort of one aspect of that culture that's alive
mm,
and well here in the Twin
yeah.
Cities. Tons of great restaurants, great stuff to do for families with kids. And I am not a lover of winter sports, which I probably would do myself a favor if I got into one of them, just sort of get something going for myself in these cold winter months. But which it's almost over, but there's a ton of um, hiking and camping to be done in this state. Land of 10,000 lakes is kind of our state motto. We do have
Mm,
tons of beautiful lakes, and there are opposite ends of the winter sports spectrum. There's ice fishing, where people have these huge insulated ice houses that they drive out onto a lake, and because the lake is frozen solid, and you can, you're wearing you're in your stocking feet and your sweatpants with holes in the ground and fishing through the ice, with your little heaters going and your cooler of beer. Or if you're on the other end of the spectrum, you might do like winter camping, which I'm not into. No, thank you. um, Cross country skiing. We even have some downhill skiing here, although it's not as amazing as going out to like Colorado or Utah and
mm,
skiing there. It's we're on like little hills, so we kind of have to make it fun in that regard. But
gotcha.
yeah, and in the summertime, all of the things that people do indoors are just sort of outside. So tons of parks and lakes around the cities too that are just full of people all the time, because we're also happy to be outside in the sunshine. I have heard from people who are not from the Twin Cities that it can be hard to kind of break into the social scene and like make friends and build your social circle when you haven't been raised here. Um, so, I have Minnesota nice is more like Minnesota passive aggressive a little bit for
Mhm.
some folks. But just like you are saying with, the stereotypes that people bring when they think of Mississippi, it's not true. There are aspects like these stereotypes were born out of real observations, but each person is an individual in that community and can shift it and make it what it is, for themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I appreciate that, because for me personally, and I know, we spent like a little bit of time talking about that, but when you said you did salsa
Mhm.
in Minnesota, I was just like, wow, like, because I lived in Orlando for like 8 years, and I would have never thought that Minnesota had a salsa scene. So that's why I asked you how you got into it, because,
Yeah.
as a part of this podcast, with people being from all over the place, I would like to help break down some of those barriers, not just within or perceptions or stereotypes, and not just
Yeah.
with careers, but like people are actually moving to these places or might be considering moving to these places. So I think that having people from those places that could give insight and information and what it's really like just in that geographic location, and not just talking about a job is great. So
Mhm.
everybody knows about the LAs and the New Yorks and Atlantas and Miamis, and like out here in Texas, I'm out here now in Dallas.
Okay. Yeah.
Like those are the places that they want to go to and they hear about and they kind of like know about, and they have more of a positive, thing. But like the art scene, like I would have never thought that about Minneapolis. So
Mhm.
I'm big into art, so I definitely have to visit out there during the summer, spring, summer, not the winter, because I cannot stand the cold at all.
Right, I
Um,
don't blame you. And it gets so dark here, the sun sets before 5 p.m.
oh
for a
wow.
little while.
Yeah.
So yes, you should definitely come to Minneapolis in the
Yeah.
spring or summer. The first weekend in May, I believe it is. Is it the first weekend in May or second? There's a there's a part of town called Northeast Minneapolis, and it's full of old warehouses because it used to be sort of like the warehouse district.
Hmm.
Um, and these warehouses have been turned into artist lofts.
Mm.
So the Northeast community is full of working artists, living and working in that part of town. Um, and they have an event called Art a Whirl, and it's put on by an organization of artists. It's kind of sort of like the artist co-op essentially.
Mm.
I'm blanking on the name, and I have a good friend who runs a website called mplsart.com. She'd kill me if she knew I was going to remember this name, this organization. But they put on the event, and it's a 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All the artists open up their studios, and there are people just mulling around the town and in all the different warehouses, and then there are tons of microbreweries in the area too. So then they host bands. So you can go to the art warehouses and walk through all the studios and buy some original art,
Hmm.
jewelry, clothing, wall
Oh
art,
wow.
photography, pottery, anything you can think of. And then you can go to a brewery and hear some live music and food trucks, and it's sort of like a kickoff to the summer.
Hmm.
It's a great event. I'm gonna send you some information on that because
Yeah, yeah, you
you
have
should
to.
come to town for Art World. Yeah, super fun.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to come out there and check it out and link up and have lunch or something
Yeah, for
while
sure.
I'm
That
out
would be
there.
great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
So tell the people a little bit about your educational background and how that played into your career,
Yeah.
if it did or didn't.
Yeah. So, I went to the University of Minnesota,
Hmm.
the Twin Cities campus. I actually was looking at different schools when I was in high school and had planned to leave town to go to college, just get away from mom and dad a little bit and try something new. And I actually, just a side note, wound up getting into a really serious car accident the end of my senior year of high school, and um, sustained a traumatic brain injury from
Oh,
that.
sorry to hear that.
Uh, and I'm okay now, but what it meant was that we probably shouldn't send Callie away to college. She needs to be close to
Uh,
home, close to doctors, close to a support network, and I'm so lucky to have. So I stayed in Minnesota and went to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus and studied PR and advertising, which oddly enough at the time I think still is through the School of Journalism, which is
mm,
like the opposite side of that sort of communications coin. One is journalism, sort of like seeking the truth and communicating to educate the public, right? And the other side of that coin is like spinning it for on behalf of your clients.
yeah.
So I studied professional strategic communication through the School of Journalism. I also got a Spanish language minor, um, and uh, thought when I was like 20 years old, my vision for my life was to move to Dallas or San Diego, and start working in the advertising and PR industry with my Spanish.
Mm,
Not really thinking about the fact that there are, um, you know, tons of native Spanish speakers who could work in advertising in Espanol much better than I could as sort of like a fledgling Spanish speaker, you know. So that vision for my life didn't come to fruition, and that's okay. But that was my master plan at the ripe age of 20 years old.
gotcha.
Yeah. So then I started. Did you have another question
You
about
can go
education?
ahead.
Okay. So graduated with a degree. I thought to myself, I have a degree in PR, public relations. So that's, working with clients to communicate about their products and services through the media, essentially. Social media really wasn't a thing when I
Hmm.
graduated college. I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2005. So smartphones weren't really even a thing either. I'm dating myself, but
I'm
I'll,
right along there with you. So I'm like, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So so PR at the time was blogging was kind of a thing that was kicking off. So it was um, the essence of PR was communicating with members of the media and then independent bloggers about your clients or your own employers or your own product or service to get them to try it, to get them to write about it, to get them to kind of share it with others in a more organic feeling way as opposed to creating a 30-second advertisement spot or taking on a half page art ad in the newspaper or in magazines and things like that. So you think about your favorite magazines like Men's Health or Cosmopolitan or Time Magazine. They do these sort of like, you know, 10 best sunscreens
Mm-hmm.
for the summer. Bet that a lot of the things in those lists someone was pitching to them, because those editors are strapped for time just like everyone else on earth, and they're losing resources and losing journalists who can actually like think critically and write something. So those pieces are ripe with PR placements. Hate to burst anyone's bubble on that, but that was my job out of college, was working for a small home and garden PR boutique that we had clients like um, plant nurseries and Toro, who makes lawn mowers and snow blowers and things like that, and Wilson Art Laminate, who makes laminate countertops. And so we had our whole spiel was like things to use and find in your home to make your home a more enjoyable place for you to live. Um, and we did a lot of stuff with home and garden shows and um, uh, what happened during that first kind of year and a half in my professional career after college was I got kind of a bad taste in my mouth for PR, which is what I thought I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to help people share the benefits of their products in an organic way, but it really quickly became sort of like, I don't like this. This doesn't actually feel natural and
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Um, So, but I did like the challenge of figuring out how to communicate with the masses or a group of people about how something would be good for them or what value they would be able to find out of something like
Mhm.
or like you know how to use your lawnmower to like cut down on the time it takes you to mow your lawn or something like that. I did enjoy sort of figuring out those stories to tell to help people's lives be better and easier and more effective and efficient, enjoyable. Um, and I am also naturally just a very organized individual. So
Mhm.
I wound up bringing that organizational aspect to this small PR boutique that I was working in. No one had things like project timelines or deadlines or anything like that. And for me, it was sort of like, okay, you want me to do this? When do we have to get it done by? Because um, I'm a professional procrastinator as well, so I'm gonna wait till the day before. We need to send this press release out on the 31st. Well, okay, I'm not going to start it on the 1st because that's a waste of my time. It's not like let's let's kind of structure this for ourselves. Um, so left PR and actually went into project management at a creative agency in town. And then at the very end of 2008, lost my job with a lot of other folks in the
Mhm.
creative industry and in the world. It was the start of the Great Recession, and I was very young. I was 24, and I didn't really understand what was happening in the world
Mhm.
with economic forces, and I told myself I want to work in the creative industry, in the creative advertising and communication industry. So that's where I'm going to be looking for jobs. And it was like banging my head against a brick wall for almost a year because all of those companies were imploding
Mhm.
essentially. And it was during that time, one of the things I was doing as a job seeker, I was forcing myself to go to networking events alone so that I would be forced to talk with people that I didn't know. If I went with someone that I knew who was another young professional, um, I would just talk with them the whole time, and then I would leave the event, you know,
Mhm.
having
Not
enjoyed
really networking.
myself, but
Mhm.
not having networked, not having met anyone who might be able to open a door for a possible job opportunity for me. And that's what I thought those networking events were good for at the time, which is true. They still are. I think we're still all kind of hobbling along trying to figure out how networking events can come back and we can like make people leave their homes and bust out a Zoom, which I think we're all kind
Mhm.
of sick of, but it can be hard to go back to in
Yeah.
person when you're so busy doing life. So I went to an event put on by the Minnesota Interactive Marketing Association, and if I could find the speakers who gave the talk at this particular event, I I I owe so much to these guys. It was two guys, and the topic of the event was 10 ways to make your web designs more user friendly. Um, it was a packed event, sold out. And a lot of people from the creative agencies around town, the creative directors, the art directors, the designers, the account people, the project managers were all there to learn about making their web designs more user friendly. And the 10 recommendations were really basic things like, you know, site navigation. And again, this is before the days of like digital products. Like the App Store didn't exist, or it was just a concept in the mind of Steve Jobs at the time. Um, uh, the 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 recommendations were like, make your navigation labels reflect the content that lives in the section of the website. Like
Mm,
really basic. That's like basic stuff.
yeah.
And just you have to respect where we were in the
With
history
the
of
internet.
interactive
Yeah.
design and internet, right? Like that was a novel thing to say. Like, don't be cute with your navigation labels. Help people get to the information that you want them to find.
Hmm.
Um, but I was sitting in this event listening to this and sort of like, yep, that makes sense. Yep, super, super makes sense. Kind of obvious. Okay, and then I'm looking around and I'm noticing that people are like furiously scribbling notes and whispering to one another. And there's all this like this is like fresh and innovative and like really interesting stuff to a lot of people in the room. And for me, it seemed very natural that we would do these things and think this way.
Hmm.
So for me, a light kind of went off in my brain at that event. Like, okay, this seems super obvious and natural. This is something that this is a thread that I could grab onto and pull into a career for myself. I didn't have a portfolio. I didn't know how to use any design tools at the time because I was a writer. I was writing press releases and communicating with members of the media up until that point and making project plans and timelines. I wasn't in Photoshop. I wasn't in InDesign, and I had purposefully stayed away from those sorts of things in college um, because I was a PC user, and we had a computer lab at the U of M School of Journalism full of Macs, and I was like, those things are weird. I don't know how to use them. Very frustrating. I'm not gonna do that. And I also thought being a creative professional meant being creative on demand, which
Mm,
seemed very challenging. Seemed
hmm.
like, white page, starting with a blank page can be very scary and overwhelming. And for me at the time, seemed impossible.
Hmm.
I know now that being a working professional creative, you have some guardrails that you're going to be forced to live within, whether you
Hmm.
like it or not. And part of your job will be to kind of push on those guardrails where you can and where it makes the most sense. Um, but I had stayed away from anything that looked like creativity because I'm not a creative person. This was my talk track. I'm not creative. I can't be creative on demand. I wouldn't be able to survive in that sort of that's not a career path that I can take. It wouldn't be right for me.
Hmm.
Fast forward to this event and the 10 ways to make your web designs more user friendly. It was like, duh, this is super obvious to me. How are you not thinking like this?
Hmm.
Well, and that's the difference between UX and UI, for example. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
in my field, there are tons of acronyms and different labels for things, and the Venn diagrams are massive. All the different bubbles all overlap. But what I was thinking about and feeling like I wouldn't be able to do was kind of come up with something to fill that blank page without any um, kind of driving requirements or goals or any starting materials. It's funny because we're talking about art. Like now I think about artists and what they do, and that makes me freeze with indecision and like, whoa, talk
Yeah.
about a blank canvas. And so I appreciate and admire the work that artists do so much more now that I work in the field that I do. Yeah, because you have to
So,
bring a lot more of yourself into your product, your output. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, you were going to ask me.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask you really quick. Could you explain to the listeners the difference between UX and UI for those? Because I think
Yeah.
that those are kind of like niche
Hmm.
acronyms, and a lot of
Yeah.
people don't necessarily know what they are.
Hey, this is Callie Myers, and you're listening to Career Insights 501 with Dr. Loso. So they are kind of they're both necessary, but UX is the definition of that is user experience, and UI, the definition of that is user interface. So UX design is designing the experience. Service design is another term that gets kind of thrown into the mix. Sometimes I think UX um, is a type of service design, but it is thinking through as the user, um, what do we want these people to do or take away, or what tasks do we want them to complete with ease? Um, as a part of our product or service. Um, so you have to think about, you know, what their lived experiences are today and what mental models they bring into the situation. Um, and then, what are they doing before? What prompts them to jump into this experience, whether it's a website or an application or, some combination thereof. And then what are they trying to accomplish? What information do they need to accomplish those things? What do we want them to do? And how can we help them accomplish what they want to do and also do what we want them to do, which sometimes aren't one and the same. And then how do we make sure that they have a delightful and easy experience and leave feeling satisfied and complete and joyful and good about what they just did. And then what do we want them to do next? Tell their friends, write a review, come back tomorrow and do it again. How do we facilitate that action, whatever it might be? UI design is bringing all of those goals and plans to life in an interface. So it's making the page layouts, it's figuring out what the button sizes and colors are, it's putting together the working design system and style guide with fonts and colors and shapes and sizes and visuals, and then using those components to bring a page to life and and kind of facilitate all the things that we just decided we want the users to do and how we're going to make that happen. Does that
Yeah, I
make
mean, I
sense?
think that was perfect, and I like that even went into the detail and giving examples about each one of those and how that will look.
Hmm.
I did want to ask you, like, what would you say would be the two personas for those? Because I think that they are very similar in a sense, but
Yeah.
also at the same time very different. So if somebody's looking to go into these as a career,
Hmm.
so I'll just say for me, I work at right now currently at the time that this is recorded, I work for Discover, and I try to get on Callie's level and be independent.
Okay.
but
Totally doable. Okay.
um, I think UX is seemingly quote unquote more technical versus UI being more of the creative side. But I know that there's a technicality to that. So when I worked at Deloitte, we went through some boot camp for UX. I can't
Okay.
remember the name of the certification that we were supposed to get. Some company, some big company.
It's okay.
Intuit. I don't know if it was Intuit. They had a boot camp for UX, but
Okay.
anyway, and then at Deloitte now we're creating this technology academy website, and we had to do some UI training. I was working with the UI team, and they were doing, maybe it was the UX. I think maybe it was both, but they were over that, and they were using
Hmm.
Figma, and it seems like the more creative part of it, but at the same time, it was, I guess, because it's a software, it seems technical. I don't know. I did that for like a month, and then I got moved to something else. But
Yeah,
what would you
that's
say that
that's
the
frustrating.
qualities or the characteristics or skills that those two
Yeah.
professionals would need?
So, they definitely overlap. So a UX designer. The third thing I'll throw into the mix just to complicate things further is product designer. A lot of companies and startups specifically uh, have product designers on staff, and the product designer needs to be a little bit UX and a little bit UI too. So they need to be able to think critically about what's the user journey we're trying to create here. What are the steps we want people to do to complete? What do we know about these folks? What do they want from us? And then translate all of that information into the designs, the UI. Um, and UX research is a sort of complementary um, professional or area of focus that can help the designer, the product designer, understand who the user is, and what they care about and what challenges they're running into while they're using the product as it's been designed today. Um, so Figma is the design tool that a lot of design teams are using. So that's where the layouts are created. It's a really, really powerful design tool that allows designers to create um, working design systems, so that you spend a lot of time creating the design system. Then when it comes to putting the page together, that is a much more quick and efficient process because you've got the design system and you can just sort of pop all these components into the screen, tweak them as you go. And it's kind of chicken or egg, you're doing a little bit of both at the same time, but that's where the technical design decisions are made and maintained. Like, what's our H1 font treatment and our H2 font treatment and our kind of text font treatment, and what do the buttons look like, and how do they expand or contract based on the labels, and then you get content strategy and content design into the mix too, to say what's our stance on button labels. Is it an active voice? Is it a passive voice? Do we have word limits? Um, and 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 how do we use content and words to help facilitate that user flow that we all define together as part of the UX planning effort. Um, so I feel like I'm broadening the conversation a little bit more here with all these different roles and titles, but
That's great.
it's I think there are all these different roles and titles in the field of user experience and product design. And the individuals who are working in the organization a lot of times will impact what the team makeup looks like. For me, for example, the other kind of component or title that I haven't mentioned yet is information architecture. And that is exactly what it sounds like. It is figuring out how to put all the building blocks of the information or the experience together in a way that would facilitate users completing the tasks that they care about, or collecting the information that they're looking for. And that's what I do. So I start with UX research, and then I help figure out what insights do we gather from the research that are going to impact what we're doing and should inform what we're doing. And then how are we going to put all the pieces of the experience together in a way that will make everyone happy and make the product a success. And then I partner with the UI designer to sort of bring that to life with the very technical decisions that they've been making about what are the colors and what are the buttons, and how are we going to create a visual experience that will delight our users and help them like be successful in what we want them to do. Um, then we work with engineers or developers to bring the system to life um, in it and make it actually interactive. Um, and there's always a ton of give and take from point A to point Z, getting into a fully functional product that has been released into the market. Then we start to collect feedback from the users by tracking their activity and asking for their feedback, interviewing them, watching them complete usability tests. And that gets back to the user research and figuring out how can we make the UI designs and the UX work better for the user and in turn for the company? Because if the users aren't happy, then the company's not going to be successful. I just talked a lot.
No, it's been like really, really great. Man, I've learned a lot so far.
Okay.
Just all the other different career or professions that someone can get into from this, and I think that that's great for the listeners. Because that's my entire thing. Why I'm doing this is for people to learn about the specific careers, and if you can come on here and say, hey, these are like branching careers, like these are other things that you can get into. This might not necessarily be your thing. I mean, I think it's spot on. I think it's perfect. So
great.
I'm not
So
mad
a
at it
lot.
at all.
Cool. That's great. Thank you. A lot of so for me, I got into UX starting out as a UX designer. So I was tasked with creating wireframes. Essentially, I wasn't a UI designer. I partnered with a UI designer, and that was a reflection of the industry and where it was at the time. I worked for an agency who would be hired by clients to design and develop their website. So it starts with me figuring out what's all the content, what are all the pages we need, putting together a map of what the experience would look like, and then figuring out what kind of templates we would need, page templates to support this experience as it has been mapped out. And then I would do wireframes of all these templates. Then I would pass the wireframes off to a UI designer or an art director at the time, and they would sort of reinterpret the wireframes with a little bit of more flair, and then they would start to define the color palette and the fonts and the button treatments. And I think that old process is a little bit bloated. Like we don't do the wireframe and full annotations like we used to back in the day. We just right now what I do is I sort of figure out the map of the experience, and then work with the product owner, the product team, product manager, engineers are involved in this too, just to say what do we need to have on each screen, like what nuts and bolts do we need to put where. That's the act of architecting the information. What needs to be where in this experience to sort of facilitate what we want users to accomplish. And so that can be, I'll do that in like a Figma jam or a map that I just threw into Figma. That's not using Figma to the fullest extent of its capabilities. That's where the UI designer comes in. They've been working on the style guide and the design system so that they can then start to bring the features and functional requirements to life in a visual way with page layouts. So my role today, while my role used to be sort of like roughing out the sort of outline of the pages, that's still my role. It's still my job. It's just I don't go through such an extensive documentation process to do that because it's kind of throwaway work. As long as I'm working with a solid UI team that can has some basic UX principles that they're operating with about page hierarchy and supporting like what the user is there to do. So that requires them to have their ducks in a row as well and be able to
Yeah.
like, make good decisions.
So I wanted to ask you because I think that you probably work with instructional designers, but that's where my background is in and what I went to school
Hmm.
for. And I was just wondering, do you run into this problem where you meet with clients or business partners, or like when you were working in corporate America, internal
Hmm.
partners, that, that they don't really have like the first thing ready to go?
Oh yeah. Yeah. First thing ready to go, meaning like a clear plan as to what they're asking you to
Yeah.
to do. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that is what has led me in the direction that I am going now, or have been going for the last few years, and being a UX researcher, is that a lot of times my agency would be hired to, design and develop a website. So then we start asking questions of the client, like, what are your requirements? What products are you going to be selling? And what do you want to say about those products? And who are you selling to? And what do they care about?
Hmm.
How do we communicate about your product in a way that makes them want to buy it? And they wouldn't really know how to do that. And so that's sort of like, that's an example of like a marketing website. Well, then you get into like software as a service, or like a digital product. And then the questions get a little bit more complex, like, who are you building this product for, and why would they use it, and what
Hmm.
are they trying to accomplish from it? And you might get five different answers. Okay, well then we gotta dig into each one of those answers and understand how the five different answers play off of one another, and um and or not. And that will then inform how the design comes together and how the experience map is created, so that we don't have five different products that are all in their own little bubbles, because that's not really how the users are thinking about them. So we have to know how the users are thinking about all of these five different features or five different tasks, so that we can put the designs together in a way that makes sense to them. And the number one thing that UX designers and UI designers need to remember, is that you are not your user. You are a human being just like your users are, but so that helps you in some sense, but you have to ask them. You have to understand who they are and what they care about and what their lived experience is, because knowing what their lived experience is helps you um, create a new experience that reflects what they know to be true about the world, if that makes sense. And that's what we call, in the research world, we call that a mental model. So an example is, I worked with a manufacturing company who was working on a robotic lawnmower.
Hmm.
Um, so like a Roomba for your lawn, in the truest sense of the word. So not only would it wasn't going to go in lines and mow your lawn once a week, it was going to be kind of going rogue around your lawn all the time, just maintaining your grass at a healthy, even height at all times. So that's a lot different. So that, so from marketing to product descriptions, and like unboxing and setup experience, and how the app was actually going to tell the user about what's happening and why it's happening, we had to understand the mental models that people bring to the concept of yard maintenance and lawn mowing, so that we could make sure to sort of address those or talk around them in a meaningful way, so that otherwise people would be totally confused. Like, wait, what? You're telling me I'm not going to get the lines? Well,
Yeah.
I dropped over $1,000 on this robotic lawnmower, and I'm in my head, I'm picturing these crisp lines that I didn't have to do. And now I see I'm not going to get the lines. I don't want this. I don't want this
Yeah.
product anymore. Like,
Yeah.
you got to address that.
Mm-hmm.
and work around it. That's a great example of like that's where user research is super important. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it
I
seems
agree.
frivolous, but it'll stop people dead in their tracks from from like doing what we want them to do, which is buy the product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not to mention how if say they bought the product and they had to bring it home and set it up, and it was like a very complex step-by-step process that we designed an app for, but like, you know, you're gonna need 3 hours to do this. So like, you know, buckle up and put the beer in the fridge for when you're done, right? We can have fun with it, but we just have to be direct and clear for people and set expectations for them. And setting clear expectations requires us to understand what expectations they already have, if that makes sense.
It reminds me so much of instructional design.
Yeah.
Kind of like going back a little bit to what you were saying about the the person that you're making it for. So like a lot of learning experiences or learning materials, I find a lot of corporate America doesn't really take the learner into consideration. They just like, oh, create this training on this hazardous waste material or this new thing, and they don't necessarily take into consideration how somebody likes to learn or what they might already know. It's just like create. It's my experience
Yeah.
is not a lot of research done or enough research done
Right.
that
Well,
sort of
and
thing.
and in that instance, hazardous waste material training, there it's really important, and like down to like legal requirements, right? It's really important to meet the legal requirements and make sure that every employee has seen these 10 points. And
Mm-hmm.
some employees might have already been exposed to 8 of 10. Some might only have been exposed to 2 of 10. And so what's the most efficient way to like figure out where everybody is and then give them what they need? In the age of technology, you'd think there'd be sort of like take this quiz to see which components you need to go through again.
Yeah,
Pat yourself on the back because you don't only have to go through 2 of 10, right? And then you have the rest of the day off or something. But
yeah,
it's just but to your point, there are ways to take the user into consideration. It's just a matter of investing the time and resources into doing that, and then knowing what to do with what you've learned. And that's what I bring to my clients, is I can help them gather the information and then figure out what it means for them as a senior UX researcher, doing um, generative research versus. So there's a spectrum of research in UX. I like to call the two ends. One end is generative or exploratory research, like tell us about how you brush your teeth. Like,
mm-hmm.
what time of day is it? What kind of toothpaste do you use? What do you like about it? Um, how do you choose a toothbrush, and why do you choose those toothbrushes? Knowing that helps you understand like how people go through this process every day and the things they think as they're doing it and what they expect out of it, so that you can craft a tool that will maybe help them brush their teeth one extra time a day, or help them, you know, be softer on their gums or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Versus evaluative research is on the other end of the spectrum. And that's like, hey, we created this app to help you track how much you brush your teeth, which is like, side note, what a bummer of an app, right? Like, I don't need that. Ugh, you know? So like, let me watch you use it and ask you questions along the way, and you tell me what's confusing and what you like and what you don't like. We're evaluating the design that we've already created. And maybe we're learning a little bit more about how people think about brushing their teeth, which is like they don't think about it very much. It's just one of the things that they have to do. Um, but all of those different types of research lead to different types of learning. So then helping the client understand what to do with that learning and how much weight to give it, and how to leverage it to make product decisions strategically and from like, the nuts and bolts of the design system. That's what research can and should be doing for product teams.
Hmm. I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about like from the start of your business to where it's at now, and what that journey looked like, and maybe some things that you learned along the
Yeah.
way?
So I went independent after working at several creative agencies. And since then, I have worked as a contractor on an in-house like product team for startups. But when I first went out on my own, I was working mostly on uh, websites, and I had learned about an agency model of how to sort of like scope work, sell work, and manage and deliver work. So because I had worked at so many different agencies, that's how I was operating as a sole proprietor, as an independent consultant. So I worked through agencies. A lot of the agencies that I had been an employee with would call me up to say, "Hey, we won this project and we need a UXer. Are you available to do this on a freelance basis?" So then they would say, this is an 80-hour project or a $200 project, and here's the timeline, and what's your hourly rate? And so I was selling my time essentially, um, knowing that the client would get out of me a bunch of deliverables and things that they could hand off to their client. But for me, I was selling my time um, to
Hmm.
focus on the client work. And that's a really it's a pretty good way to sort of get started and get your foot in the door at different places, and start to kind of figure out for yourself whether or not that works, and how it impacts how you're showing up on the team and for the client and with the work. If you're billing hourly, for me, what I noticed is that if I'm billing hourly and I'm tracking my time, I don't mind working on a Saturday because I'm getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Um, So, I could decide when I was going to sell my time and when I wasn't, essentially. And I knew if I overloaded myself, yeah, I was going to be a little bit tired, but I would reap the benefits with the paychecks that I would get.
Hmm.
Um, and as I have grown as an independent consultant, I've come to appreciate the flat rate project fee a little bit more. But that has required me to be really clear on exactly what it is I'm going to be doing for people, and
Scope.
how I'm going to manage the scope. Yep. And how I am going to show up as the guide, as the leader, as sort of like, hey, client, here's what you need, here's the goal you have, here's how I'm going to help you get there, and I'm going to lead you every step of the way, and I'm going to deliver these things to you. And at the end of this journey together, you're going to have what you need. And so am I in the form of a flat rate project fee. Um, so that allows me to just show up for the client and do whatever needs to be done. But the differences there are that the client has to trust me in a different way. They have to trust that I understand what their goal is, and that I have a plan to help them get to that goal. And all of that is worth this bigger price tag that we're talking about. Even though if I were working hourly, we would get to the same dollar amount, maybe, or maybe even less. Or I'm sorry, if I were working hourly, you know, it would all kind of be a wash in the end. But
Hmm.
seeing that bigger price tag again requires that they have a different type of trust in me and what I'm capable of doing for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely.
That's my filler phrase, if that makes sense. And you can cut that out if you want
Gotcha, gotcha is mine. My
to.
mom was like, "Oh yeah," you kept saying "gotcha, gotcha." I was like, "Okay, I got you if you keep on," but so I have to
Yeah,
edit like "gotcha," and I've been trying to be better at not saying
it's funny. I'm
"gotcha."
realizing right now that I've said, if that makes sense, quite a bit. So, um, yeah, so right now I am actively working on figuring out how to work with direct clients, so not going through agencies as sort of like the middleman anymore. And that requires me to have more ongoing conversations with potential clients. Like, the agency essentially does the sales process for me, and then they bring me the work with the dollar amount, the number of hours, and what's your hourly rate. Okay, can you start next week? That's really slick. But what I don't have visibility into what that's going to be. So I'm kind of a sitting duck waiting for someone to
Mm,
come and ask me to work on their project. So I don't have any foresight or predictability really. So it can feel a little feast or famine. Um, so what I want to be doing is working with more direct clients, and selling flat projects so that I'm not attaching my time to a dollar, um, which again is a great way to kind of get started and
mhm,
start to really get clear on what it is you're doing, where you find joy and where you can deliver a lot of good value. That's where you can then lean into saying like, okay, this is how I'm gonna specialize my services or niche down and create um, something that I know people need that I can deliver with ease, and be successful at. And then that's where I think the flat project piece can be valuable.
mhm.
And then theoretically, you're doing good work. It's easier because you're not tracking your time being a butt in a seat. I like to say I don't like to be a butt in a seat. I want to deliver value to my clients. I don't want to fill a hole for them. um, and then theoretically, I can deliver that value to them and get better and better at delivering the value for myself over time so that then I can like go to the beach,
Yeah,
and
right.
still be delivering value.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the dream, I think. Yeah.
Most definitely. I can definitely feel you on that one.
Yeah.
It's so funny just with the few people that I've talked to so far, especially the self-employed
Hmm.
individuals, looking at how they want to have or provide more value. It seems like it's been either one of the two things that has really inspired these individuals to go and start their own thing, is either to provide more of a direct connection or value to clients or people that
Hmm.
they're serving, and to fulfill a purpose. So, and again, these first like few podcasts, you all, I apologize because I'm going through some career things, but like that's a
Okay.
big thing for me, and I just
Hmm.
talked about it in what will be last week's infosode, about not really having that sense of fulfillment, and I don't really
Hmm.
feel like as an instructional designer now, I feel like it's more so just somebody bringing me something and telling me to do it, and not really getting my input or working with people. So it's just kind of like I don't really feel like me and honestly my team is really providing the value, because we're all learning specialists, and they don't really get our input on things concerning learning. They just say, hey, we need this training, make it like this, and that's pretty
Yeah.
much what we do.
Yeah. That's, in the corporate world, uh, there's a lot of hierarchy, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing you say is that you like hit the ceiling in what you're in the role you're in now, and maybe what you're being asked to do or what's expected of you. Um, and that happens to me even outside of the corporate world. Is sort of like, I've hit the ceiling in how I'm interacting with clients and making money. So like, what's next? How can I kind of make
Mm-hmm.
this ceiling my new floor, and like,
Exactly.
stand on the knowledge that I have gained and the learning that I've experienced in the past few years, and like take it in a new direction. What's that new direction?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yes, wanting to feel like you're contributing um, something of value, and that's a big reason why I went out on my own. Also because um, I'm really impatient when it comes to like bullshit.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I'm the
you know,
same
like
way.
you've got this person who's a project manager, but who's developing a timeline that is not based in any form of reality. Like, you know, we can't get this done in a day. So it's easy to put a day on the timeline because that supports your boss, but
Hmm.
it's not realistic. Come on, let's think
Yeah,
about this. Come on. And like your boss's expectations are out of line, and that's a
yeah,
really challenging conversation to have. But
yeah,
let me have it for you. Like I can play the bad guy here.
yeah,
Um, and just like we have to face reality together, and that's something that, in a creative advertising agency, surprise, shocker, like they weren't really great at like facing reality a lot of the time,
yeah.
which would lead to the people who were on the hook for delivering the work to work
Hmm.
nights and weekends and be super stressed out and get last minute 11th hour feedback that would have them staying up all night, and that was like some sort of badge of honor. No thanks, that's not
Yeah,
how I want to live.
yeah.
um, I learned a ton from those early days about kind of how things work, and um, how to make it better in the first pass so that I wasn't staying up all night. And
Hmm.
that's part of what being a young professional is. I think you've gotta kind of flex those muscles and learn where you're good and maybe where you need a little extra TLC and love and support. Um, or maybe where you don't even want to go there. Like this, I'm not doing that at all. And then that I think helps guide you into where you can grow as a professional and find success, both professionally and personally. I don't want to feel like I can't show up as myself every day. I think I watched my mom, like she was an executive recruiter again before the days of LinkedIn, and she had like her um, shoulder pad business suits and her nylons. And I'm so glad we don't live in a world where I have to show up to work like that as a woman, but
Hmm.
that's what she had to do. And she would come home and like turn into a different person. And I think we're living in in a moment where fewer and fewer people have to do that, but I think some people
Hmm.
still
Have to.
have to do that, and that's something that I think this might be a little bit of a stretch, but as a researcher, as someone who helps people understand the experiences and points of view of others, I feel like part of my job is to help people really come to appreciate and respect other people's lives and
Mhm.
learn how to have a positive impact on the lives of others who don't live like them or have different experiences than them. Um, that's kind of in the
It's
face of like corporate profit sometimes. So that's the challenge. But
yeah. It's so crazy because I just had a similar little mini conversation, like some dialogue around that with a lady that I just talked to, um, D, and we were talking about being able to be your authentic self and how like not being your authentic self at work can bring like these mental health issues and like just
yes,
dissatisfaction. And so that's crazy that you mentioned that. So it's becoming more of a thing, but I definitely agree with you. I don't think as many people now have to go into work and be somebody that they aren't outside of work. I think it's becoming
hmm
more of a norm to be just authentically yourself at work.
yeah, I hope so. I think in different industries and different like types of organizations, there's different levels of that.
Yeah.
I
I
think.
think maybe in like law or medicine and those type of things, you still have to put on somewhat of a facade. But I
Hmm
don't know. A lot of lawyers are dicks, so
Yeah,
in and out.
so it fits,
It's what it
right?
is.
Yeah. That's funny. Yes. So yeah, I mean, one of my like, my reason for existence or Common Marvel, my company, um, I want to help people um, truly understand other people's points of view in a way that can benefit everybody. So understand and appreciate and accept other people's points of view. And then because I'm working in a like digital product space, that then hopefully will the next step on that journey is to create and deliver experiences that make people's lives better. There's a ton of the exact opposite out there in the world. A lot of what in UX we call dark patterns, which is like
Mm.
someone learned, um, did a lot of research and understands their customers and are using that understanding to create a dark pattern to get them to do something that really isn't beneficial for them in the long run, like Facebook or there's a lot
Ah,
of dark patterns happening in the world. They're sort of like, you know, a really, really like non-important or sort of silly version of a dark pattern is when you get, you get the sort of interstitial pop-up when you go to the retail site. It's like sign up for the email and get 15% off your next purchase. And you get the email form field and then you get the button like give me 15% off. Or then the text below it is like, no thanks, I'd rather pay full price.
yeah.
Like, of course I don't like clicking that button, but I don't want to give you my email. But
Yeah.
I'm at the point right now where I'm like, you're gonna email me anyway, whatever, just give me the fifth. Like,
Right. The first time I saw that, I was like, okay, this is a different
yeah,
strategy. You're trying to like guilt people into, oh, I don't like saving money. No, I don't today.
yeah,
Um, so yeah,
jerks, right?
exactly.
I noticed on Facebook recently that if I'm the type of person that I don't like to have all the notification bugs,
Mm,
so I got my Facebook app icon, and if it's got a little bug with like two or one or three, I want to open it up and like get rid of that. And it's like a nervous twitch sometimes. But
mm,
what I've noticed is that the new design, what they've done now is hidden the bottom navigation. So as soon as I get into the app, if I so much as touch the screen, that bottom navigation drops away. And then I don't see the bug that I came in there to clear.
mm.
So then I start scrolling, and that's a dark pattern because they just want me to scroll and
Scroll,
it's
yeah,
working. It's
yeah,
working.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
actually so interesting. Like I've never thought about how companies can get. Well, I know companies get information on customers and use it in nefarious or negative, however you want to say it, way. But
Hmm.
I just didn't think about it like in these instances that that you're talking about. That is kind of eye opening. But especially the thing with the button about saving the money, because that is something that I think is recently that they've just started doing on these websites, especially like these retail websites.
Hmm.
So, but for me, I hate cleaning out my inbox. I have like thousands of emails, and so I'm trying to get better at like every day going in and deleting the spam. But so I just like, no, I don't like saving money. Or I'd like hit save me the 15% and then go in my inbox and unsubscribe from it because I just hate getting all that spam in my
Yeah, me
inbox.
too.
Yeah.
That's an
So
ebb and flow too. Like I'll just let it go for a while and then I get overloaded. And why? Yeah, why is Shoe Carnival all of a sudden emailing me 5 times a day? I haven't talked to you guys in years. Like what? You know?
during Black Friday, send all the emails out. Save ten
Yeah,
percent.
right.
So
So, yeah. Um, but back, what were we talking about that was like related to? UX as a career. I mean, for people who are looking to like start a career in UX, there are tons of boot camp programs out there. Um, I don't think you need to go through a boot camp in order to find a job in UX. Um, but I think what you do need is to be able to show how you can think critically about an experience and a set of users, and create something that will like meet their needs and serve the business. And that's, I think all designers need to continue to um, think critically about how to serve their business, because
Hmm.
you know we're not here for fun. Like we want to have a good time, right? But we're trying to grow a business, and so just understanding how your employer makes money will help you be a better team member and make better design decisions for your business and for your users.
So you mentioned boot camps. What are some other professional development opportunities out there that you think that people could take advantage of?
So there are boot camps. A lot of them are like essentially 16 weeks of full-time effort. So
Mm,
that's not, not feasible for a lot of folks. But like Google has a UX design program that it's self-paced. Um, or there might be some master classes, which I'm
mm,
honestly not familiar, but there might be some master classes on like design theory and
mhm.
um, usability, things like that. There are tons of books and blogs out there that this is how I went, once after I realized like, okay, this is something that I could do. I essentially started looking for programs. Boot camps didn't exist yet. UX design wasn't really even like a common term. I was called an information architect. That was my first job um, in the field. So I found a creative portfolio school that actually had a couple of UX focused classes, and I thought I would try them. I booked a phone interview with them to get more information, and I called them and they never picked up the phone. So I was ready to give them like, thousands of dollars to go through this portfolio school, and they never picked up my
Oh
call.
wow.
So, I mean, it's kind of a blessing in disguise because what that forced me to do is like go out into the UX or information architecture community and talk with people who are doing the work that I wanted to be doing. And I met a woman who offered to mentor me because, we just had a couple conversations. And she was like, based on what um hearing from you and the conversations we're having, I think you'd be able to do this. So if you want to, I can like help you through the process. You pick a website that you think needs to be redesigned. Again, before the age of digital products, so it was a little bit more straightforward. Pick a website that you think needs help, um, and we'll UX it together, or you will UX it, and I will kind of guide you through the process. And she's still a trusted mentor and friend of mine to this day. But she get what we worked together for like 8 months, I think, meeting like after hours, for coffee over lunch and talking about what I'm doing. And she's giving me feedback and telling me what I need to do next. And we went all the way through, like I put together a slide deck of like, the full start to finish, like here's the website, here are the problems with it, here are your audiences, here's what they need, here's your new sitemap, here are your new page templates, here's some new features that I designed for you to like better serve your users, the people who are paying you. Um, and I took that to a creative agency, like, here's this work product that I have. Like no one paid me for it, but so there might be a bunch of holes in it because I didn't get actual client feedback. And I was able to get an internship with that kind of spec project, that student project, I call it. So anyone can do that on their own time. And that's essentially what you get out of a boot camp. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch, because with a boot camp you get, like, instruction. There's a designed program that has been tested and tweaked, and you get instructors who know what they're doing. But if you are short on time and short on funds, um, just pick a problem that you see and figure out how to solve it, and write
Yeah.
it down on paper, create some
Yeah.
visuals. And that's, I kind of pay it forward by doing that with other young professionals that I meet. Um, it's a little different now
Nice.
because it could be like a product. Uh, One woman
Mm-hmm.
who I worked with, she wanted to redesign the account renewal and update flow for Hulu, through that required
Mm-hmm.
Apple login, Apple ID, and all this stuff. And so, we talked about, like, you can't redesign Apple's flow because that belongs to Apple. So
Mm-hmm.
we got to just work with what we have right now. So, you just kind of learn through doing, about all those kinds of ins and outs. And then she had a work product that she was able to then bring to an agency, and now she's working as a UX designer. Um, but she had
Nice.
graphic design chops already.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah.
Nice. I think that was like a perfect like advice and example. So like you told them to, like, if they can't afford the boot camp, to go out there and to redesign a website or a project, and then you went into giving how you did it and the examples of the different things that you. Because I was going to ask you like
Hmm.
what would be an example of that, and you went right into it. So thanks for
Cool.
that. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, people say, "Hey," I always used to when I was going to go to college, but they didn't tell you about the networking and the study abroads, and you hear about internships, but nobody really tells you where to look for those or how to be competitive. And so I really appreciate you taking the extra time and effort to elaborate on how to
Mhm.
actually do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I would also say, if you get into a UX role and you're early on in your career, you're probably going to be tasked with more UI design work. Um, you're the designer, or you're coordinating. Maybe you're in the research team and you're coordinating UX research. Um, you might not be leaned on or asked to provide strategic input or strategic direction. And I would encourage you to just sort of, you know, focus on what you're being asked to do, and make that as good as you possibly can. And then learn from the people around you, and ask to be brought into the strategic conversations when there's room, when you can do that. Um, but helping your team, contributing to your team in the way that you're being asked to contribute, then I think helps build trust for you and your teammates and your managers, and the other people, your other teams you're working with. And that then allows you to kind of find some leverage to sort of explore other areas of opportunity, like in strategy or research, or just sort of showing up and providing value as much as you can, and then listening and learning when things are maybe a little bit beyond your scope. um, yeah.
I like that because to me that ties back to what you said earlier about, after you graduated college and you went into working for that firm or that company, and
Hmm.
I guess, to me, it sounded like it didn't align up with your expectations as a college student or graduate, and to kind of how you were saying they were putting the spin on it, and it wasn't like what you really wanted to do or were expecting out of the job. So,
Yeah.
like, telling them that they will probably be doing more UI work in the beginning than the UX, I think is great, because it really, I guess, establishes or just like let them know how it's pretty much going to be getting out of college.
Hmm.
So if somebody's looking even though they have a degree that says that they know all this stuff, just setting that reality for them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
It was hard. It was a tough pill to swallow for me. I wanted
yeah,
to be like doing all the stuff, and I was not prepared for it, and I didn't know how to acknowledge that. I was just too
yeah,
young,
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I knew it all. Yeah.
I can relate even with my PhD. I thought I was going to be working like in one of the Microsoft studios with some type of education or technology doing research, but it didn't really quite work out like that at all. And as I got older and out
Hmm.
after, afterwards, after I got my PhD, kind of learning the importance of a PhD and where and when it's relevant, and it really not so much in corporate America. Academia, if you're working in like some research, some science, or company, or I guess STEM company maybe, but just
Hmm.
the instructional design stuff that I'm doing, like a PhD, definitely isn't worth the time and effort if you're going to be working in corporate America. So that's something that I talk about in my book, and just when I'm talking to people about going to college, and especially getting those advanced degrees, just really understanding if it's better to just get the experience or certifications or whatever, instead of
Yeah.
going to get another degree, because that's has been a thing, like really pushing college, when a lot of times it doesn't really benefit you in the
Right.
workplace.
That, when one of the other things I explored when I was trying to figure out how to get into this field was like a master's program at the
Hmm.
University of Minnesota for rhetorical communication. And the thing that led me to that was, I tried the portfolio school. They never picked
Hmm.
up the phone. So then I started just talking to other, like meeting professionals in the world who are doing this work, and how did you get into this field, and what suggestions do you have for me? And one guy who I had worked with at a creative agency, um, he had a master's in rhetorical communication, but he had already had a job where somebody needed to take over the website and like figure out how to make it better, because it just wasn't websites were like, oh, I guess businesses need a website now. So it was a
Hmm.
much different time in the world of technology and the internet. So he just took it on. It just became his thing. So his education really didn't have anything to do with the fact that he was um, in web design at that time.
Hmm.
It did help him sort of structure an argument and help the client understand why they were doing what they were doing. But I looked at into that program, and what I saw was 2 more years of not working and a bunch of student debt, a bunch more student debt, and then I have a degree that might get me into something. It would have taken me somewhere, but it wasn't
Hmm.
where I was looking to go at that time. So I just said, this isn't this isn't what I want. So yeah, to your
Yeah.
point, where do you want to go? What kind of life do you want to lead? Do you want to be in for profit, nonprofit, academia? Yeah, because that PhD is gonna um, open certain doors and not be much help in others.
Yeah. Honestly, it seems like it's closed a lot.
I'm
That's
sorry.
another podcast episode.
Yeah. When
So,
PhDs close the doors.
yeah, exactly. Maybe it needs to be a book. That might be a New York Times bestseller. Um, I'm going to switch it up here a little bit and jump into
Okay.
the would you rather.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you five of these, and you just give me whichever one you would rather do.
Okay.
So, the
Okay.
first one. Would you rather be able to teleport once a day, but nothing comes with you, including your clothes? Or would you rather be able to fly, but need to drink jet fuel before each flight?
Fly, definitely. I definitely want to. I want to feel the wind in my hair. I'll drink that jet fuel.
Okay. Um, would you rather have an infinite amount of toilet paper, or have an infinite amount of sex toys. Okay, I didn't. This sounds like it's got the explicit tag. You don't have to
I'm gonna
answer
say
that one.
toilet paper.
Uh, would you rather be invisible or able to fly?
Huh. Wow. I think I'd rather be able to fly.
Yeah, that's what I would choose. It's like I just fly high enough nobody can see me.
Yeah. Then I can go wherever I want. If I'm invisible, I'm still here.
Yeah. So, would you rather get paid to read every book or get paid to watch every TV show?
Huh. Man. I think I'm gonna say TV show.
Okay. Would you rather
Because
have? Go ahead.
I mean, there are a lot of bad books out there. There are a lot of good books,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of bad TV shows. This is a tough one, but I'll stick to my
TV shows
answer.
that I feel like it's easier to skip through and kind of like check it
Zone
out.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Would you rather have a horrible job but be able to retire comfortably in 10 years or have your dream job but have to work until the day you die?
Oh man. I mean, I think the path I'm on indicates that I would rather have my dream job and work till I die. Not because I'm not successful, but just, yeah,
Yeah. Just
I'm
love what
not
you
one,
do.
I don't enjoy phoning it in ever. Mhm.
Yeah. Last one, I think this might be six, but
Okay, that's fine.
would you rather go to the gym to get fit or run in nature to get fit?
I'd rather work out in nature, although I don't like to run.
I got you. Yeah. I'm not a runner myself.
I'll just bring the kettlebell out into nature and then we'll do it out there. Yeah.
Sounds good. So what do you listen to? Like when you're working, do you listen to music? Like what tunes does Callie listen to?
Well, when I'm working, I like to listen to, I can't listen to songs with lyrics
Hmm.
because I'll get kind of pulled away from by the lyrics. So, there's a I think it's a guy. His name is Tycho, Ticho, and he does it's like it's just wordless music. It's not techno. It's just very nice um, music.
Hmm.
So
I have to
I
check them
listen
out.
to him, and then I'll do on Spotify. I'll do like Tycho Radio, and
Okay.
that helps me kind of pick up on other artists that have similar.
Sounds.
It's not. It's not like classical or jazz, or it's not
Is it
elevator
lo-fi?
music. It might be. I'm not great with that kind of with
With the
genre
genres? Yeah.
definitions. Um, then when I'm like at home, over the last, so I I've listened to Beyonce's Renaissance like
Mm.
a lot, almost exclusively during the summer, and that kind of brought me into like, females of hip hop and R&B,
Okay.
and I'm into all of that. And growing up with like SWV and Vogue, and then I kind of got back into that. So I've been enjoying
Okay.
all those like nostalgic. I have a
Uh-huh.
nostalgic playlist, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
I've been listening to some SWV here recently since they've got that TV show out with Escape. So
they
I was
what?
into.
They have.
It's a reality TV show on Bravo.
Is it any good?
It's a lot of drama, so I don't know if it's good or bad. It's a lot of drama with Escape. But it's entertaining. I'm not really
You
big
know,
into
it
reality
does not
shows.
surprise me that Escape is the are the drama queens. It doesn't surprise me. And SWV is they're just like the cool heads.
Yeah,
They just have it
it's
together. They're like, listen, we don't have to get upset about this.
pretty
Just
much, yeah. So
oh man. And
yeah.
Vogue actually came to the Minnesota State Fair pre-pandemic. I missed
Oh
it,
really?
but they were at the Minnesota State Fair. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would see them. Hmm.
I'm trying to get around to seeing a lot of those '90s artists that I grew up with. Before it's too late, so to speak.
Yeah, I hear you.
So that's a thing of mine. A couple more questions. So, what are some things that you do for self care?
Um, I take a walk with my dog every day. Um,
Okay.
and I go salsa dancing. That's a huge like stress relief kind of outlet for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I m- make sure as an independent consultant, you know, I'm in my home office, so I make sure to um, schedule in-person meetings, especially since the pandemic, in-person meetings with friends and colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
so that I'm not, um, you know, stuck at home all day. Like I have things I do in the evenings, but it's
Okay.
good to just get out of the house during the workday. And really just staying connected to my community is a
Mm-hmm.
big form of self-care for me because it's easy for me to just um, get
Caught
head
up from
down
work.
in the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel you on that. I think it was
yeah.
like 2 or 3 days before I left out the house. I was going to the gym, and I was like, I haven't been outside in like 2 or 3 days. I was like,
Oh
this is bad.
no. Yeah.
So yeah. I typically try to go to the gym at least 5 days a week, but
Mhm.
I was re-editing my book. I had added a new chapter, and then the KDP thing is still acting crazy. So I'm trying to get that formatting right, and then I had to add the index after my indexer finished, like indexing the book, and
Oh man.
so yeah, I got caught up in all that because I'm trying to get that like done so I can move on to
Mhm.
something else. So it's been taking up a huge part of my time.
Yeah.
Um,
I worked with a client called Mayfly Design. They're here in Minneapolis, but they're a book design company. So they'll do typeface and
okay,
book covers. And sounds like you are doing that on your own, but if you ever decide like you want to flip the table and give it to someone else,
yeah,
Mayfly Design. Hmm.
okay. I have to check them out. I do. It is something that is because of the content it talks about college and careers and stuff. So it's something that I have to be continuously updated. But
Oh,
I
okay.
do want to have um, a different cover and like a custom typeface. So I definitely have to check them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. You should. I'll send you their website.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. Um, I was just gonna ask you, was there any like I guess great success that you've had so far in your career?
uh, I mean, I think I find the most success when I am able to really help. This is gonna sound so nerdy. Help my clients understand their users. Like it really is true. Like um, the the doors that open up once people have a better understanding of the people that they're trying to serve and how those who those people are and that they're not like scary strangers. They're not um, you know, confused or stupid individuals,
Hmm.
which you know, sometimes designers are sort of like, well, I designed it this way. It's really obvious. Like, why aren't they using it? Like, why doesn't it make sense to them? And the answer, like, just go talk to them, ask them. And I love helping designers get a better sense of who they're designing for. Um, And then when I'm able to also help the broader organization, like the engineering team and the leadership team,
Hmm.
also get better feel for who their audiences are and what they care about. I get it's so fun and exciting to like see the light bulbs turn on and then they're able to move the company in the right direction as a result. So that's not one example, but those
Yeah,
are the best kinds of outcomes. Yeah.
nice. So,
Yeah.
if you want to just let everybody know, like if you have anything coming up or, any product or promotion or anything like that you want to plug and let people know where they can reach you, you can go ahead and.
Yes. I don't have anything coming up necessarily, but Art World is in May, so everyone should come to Minneapolis. And if you're listening and you're on a product team or you own a website or other application and you're trying to figure out how to take it to the next level, or you need some help getting more familiar with your audiences, I'd love to help out. You can find me at commonmarvel.com and email me at hello@commonmarvel.com. Yeah.
Great. Well, Kelly, thanks for being on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much. This has been this has been a lot of fun. It was great to connect with you and thank you for listening to me. I hope I did okay.
No, you did great. I appreciate
Cool. Cool.
it.
All
Bye.
right. Well, enjoy the
Enjoy your
rest of your day.
weekend.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Bye
Bye.
bye.